Okay, Ray, from what I remember, we go back to college days and Eden Baptist Church before they occupied their new chapel and things like that. So I won't tell them how many years it is since then, but can you give us a rough idea of what you've been up to since then? I know something about Bedford, but what have you been up to in these intervening few years? And then, you know, we'll have to think about what's happening at the convention itself.
Oh, thank you, Peter. Well, it was 1975 when I started at uni in Cambridge. And yeah, I was there for 6 years, geography, and then I did a sort of historical geography research degree. After that, I was a window cleaner for a couple of years. And then I became an EU consultant, number crunching figures for data for a project that a boss of mine was doing. And then in 1982, I was appointed as a trainee leader in a church in Bedford, and I've been at the same church ever since. So 40 years, God willing, next year. So been involved in one church all that time. Church was quite small when we first started. It was started in 1972 with just 12 people. Some of you know the name Colin Richards. Colin was the first pastor of the church. And then when Colin left to plant another church, I was left, as it were, with what was called Bedford Evangelical Church. There was about 70 people then. And we planted other churches. We've been involved in about 4 or 5 church plants. And our own church has grown quite considerably. We're a congregation of well over 500 now. And I've led a team. We have about 15, 16 staff and getting on for 300 members, I suppose. And I passed that job on now. I retire in about 18 months' time, and we didn't want to just work and stop. That wasn't good for me, wasn't good for the church. So we had a 3 or 4 year plan of passing on to another much younger pastor, Martin Salter. And Martin's now doing my job. And these last couple of years, I've been working for the Fellowship of Independent Evangelical Churches, the FIEC. And I've been doing 2 days a week for them, just supporting leaders around the country. They call me grandiose title leadership consultant, but I think just means a listening ear and helping particularly leaders as their churches begin to grow, as many churches are around the country, slowly, but they are growing. So that's what I've been up to in 40 years. There we are. Whistle stop.
Yeah. And it whistles past, doesn't it?
Oh, unbelievably.
Can I just flash up on the screen now for people? The share screen. I've got the program for the West Cornwall Convention, and I hope you now can recognise that is Ray. That's the picture I've pinched from the FIEC website. So that's the first full week in September, Monday the 6th to Thursday the 9th. The same kind of format that we've had over so many years, although obviously not last year. Ray was due to have spoken to us last year, but something happened in 2020. And there's the outline of the talks for this year. So our servant Saviour, how Philippians can shape you to be like him. Now, this handout, it's still, I think I call it an advanced draft stage. But Ray has given us a few potted summaries there. And once we've actually finalised the wording of this, we'll get this sent around to each of your churches. If you don't get a copy in the next couple of weeks, contact me and I can send it to you direct. There's, of course, notices like that. And there's even some further details about Ray if you want to check him out. But if we go back to Philippians, Ray, why Philippians? Is there anything in particular that, are you saying, I think these churches in Cornwall could particularly do with hearing the message of Philippians, or is it a good message for any church at any time?
Well, it is a very wonderful message for any church at any time. It was written for all of us. I think it's the letter to the church that Paul has the most joy about, the least hassle, if I could put it like that. I mean, being a pastor, it's about conflict resolution, isn't it? One way or another, there's always something to deal with. But in Philippians, we see Paul writing to a youngish church, and they do bring him a great amount of joy. The word joy is all the way through this letter. But it's joy in serving. It's joy in seeing the gospel go forward. And I just think it's a wonderful, short, but highly Jesus exalting letter. So I thought, well, you know, it almost can be preached anywhere. But I hope, particularly for West Cornwall, and I have friends who live in West Cornwall, I have relatives who live down where you are. In fact, we're going on holiday on Monday to up near Trevone, near Padstow, camping. So, well, I'm glad we weren't there at the weekend. Friday, my goodness. But I think particularly for where you are, it will be an encouragement to stand together in the gospel and trust God that that gospel can transform lives as much today as it did then. We think back to that little church in Philippi. We think of Lydia, the slave girl, the jailer, just 3 of the converts. And, you know, God is still doing that today. And Philippians is a great encouragement to Christians to stand together, joyfully serving in the gospel. So, yeah, it's also, I think it can be done in 4. It's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I think there are 4 great chapters, and I think that fits very well for our format for the convention as well.
Thanks very much, Ray. You've just pinched my 3 points for tomorrow morning. Lydia, the slave girl, and the jailer.
Okay, great. Well,
thank you very much. As you say, it can be done anytime.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for sharing with that. I'm going to stop the recording now. Then perhaps we could briefly pray for the convention and Ray and the convention. And then Ray, you can go back to whatever else you were doing this Saturday evening.
Vacuuming.